If life contains so much pain, why are we still so afraid to die? The Charvakas thought the answer was simple. Because even with all its pain, life still contains enough pleasure for us to want to keep living. And from that idea came one of the most misunderstood parts of the philosophy. Welcome back to the channel, I am Parth, and in today's video we are going to understand why the Charvakas placed so much value on pleasure and why their view was much more than eat, drink and enjoy. Charvaka was an ancient Indian materialistic school. Their original writings have been lost, so much of what we know comes from later accounts, often written by the critics. They rejected an immortal soul, rebirth and another world after death. So once the Charvakas had said that a person begins with birth and ends with death, one question becomes unavoidable. How should we live this one life? Their answer begins with a line from the text. Since this is the only life for the individual, make the best use of it. For them, every living being naturally seeks pleasure and tries to avoid pain. Pleasure therefore became what the text calls a natural ethical principle. A good action was one that helped minimize pain and maximize pleasure. So were the Charvakas saying that morality simply did not matter? Not really. They simply judged an action differently. Instead of asking whether it would earn religious merit or affect another birth, they looked at the pleasure and pain it produced within this life. This is why, out of the four traditional aims of life, dharma, artha, kama and moksha, they accepted kama, worldly pleasure, and artha, the wealth needed to secure it. They rejected moksha because there was no rebirth from which one needed liberation, and dharma when it meant religious merit earned for another life. The texts are also very direct about pleasure itself. The Charvakas did not rank pleasure as higher or lower, and they did not distinguish the pleasure of the body from the pleasure of the mind. But then comes the obvious objection. What if pleasure itself causes pain? The Charvakas knew that it often did. Their answer is captured in a simple example. A wise person does not throw away grain because it has a husk. He removes the husk and keeps the grain. Or as another example puts it, you do not reject a rose simply because it has thorns. The point is that the presence of pain does not automatically make a pleasure worthless. The text then turns the same idea towards something more personal. Love. A partner or a child may create what it calls heaven on earth. Losing that person can bring enormous pain. You could avoid that pain by never loving anyone deeply. But then you have also given up the love in order to protect yourself from losing it. For the Charvakas, that is not necessarily a better life. A life with no love can itself become miserable and barren. Sometimes the things that make life valuable are also the things that makes us vulnerable. And this brings us back to the opening question. Sorrow exists, they say, in the palace of a king as well as the hut of a beggar. Yet if pain really outweighed pleasure, why would people still desire to live and fear death? Their answer was not to escape pleasure because suffering exists. It was to reduce pain where possible without throwing away the pleasure that makes the life worth living. Now consider another line from the text. A Charvaka lives in the moment for the moment. That does not mean they rejected the future completely. The same source recommends agriculture, keeping cattle, and trade as ways of gaining wealth and pleasure, all of which require planning. So their objection was not really to tomorrow. It was to sacrificing something real now for a future reward that was doubtful. In other words, a pigeon today is better than a peacock tomorrow, and another, a sure small coin is better than a doubtful gold. And this is where the view of pleasure turns into a criticism of religion. The Charvakas rejected rituals, fasts, and penances that asked people to give something up now for a better life after death. From their point of view, the sacrifice was real. The reward was doubtful. Some surviving accounts even accuse priests of using these promises as a way of making a living. One story captures their criticism perfectly. A Charvaka asks a priest why he is sacrificing an animal. The priest says, the animal will go directly to heaven. The Charvaka replies, if that is true, why not take its place yourself? For the Charvakas, paradise could only be on this earth. Heaven meant the pleasure found in this life. Hell meant the suffering caused by disease, enemies and hardship. So their philosophy of pleasure was not simply do whatever feels good. It came from a much larger question. If this is the only life we have, why should we reject its pleasure or wear ourselves out for rewards promised in another life? But everything now depends on one word: doubtful. Why did the Charvakas think some things could be known while heaven, rebirth, and religious rewards could not? You see smoke rising over a hill and conclude there must be a fire. It feels like basic logic. The Charvakas question even that. If something as ordinary as smoke and fire could be questioned, what happens to claims about things no one has ever seen? This is what we will explore in the next video. Thank you for watching this video. This is Philosophy by Path signing off.